Why in the world do I start so many books? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video I want to share the 4 medieval history books that I am concurrently reading because apparently I have a problem. Ever since the beginning of April, I've been reading and starting and not finishing books, and I have I think 12 sitting on a desk in the dining room. And yeah, there's not I don't have any plan on DNFing them or anything. I just keep starting new ones, just in one of those weird mood reading things. So I guess mood reading May is definitely a thing for me. So anyways, I just figured I'd talk about the medieval ones that I'm trying to push my way through, since it is quarter 2 of Historathon, and I've been doing really bad with my medieval history reading. So figure if I just talk about it, that'll give me some sort of weird impetus to actually get through them pretty quickly. But so we got 2 that are on the same topic, 1 audiobook that I'm slowly chipping away through, and then a 3rd one, or a 4th, I guess that would be the 4th one, yeah. So anyways, the first 2 are on a similar topic. We have Joseph and Frances Gui's Women in the Middle Ages that I recently picked up. This really banged up used copy, but I'll take what I can get. As well as Eileen Powers' Medieval Women. And this is a really nice Folio Society edition. So I'll kind of sort of talk about them sort of at the same time, since they're on a very similar topic. I recently picked this one up along with their Marriage and Family in the Middle Ages. I read a bunch of their other social histories. Let's see, Life in a Medieval City, Life in a Medieval Village, that sort of thing. I might do a reread of Life in a Medieval Castle, because a few on the Historathon Discord channel were talking about that one. I read that one a long time ago, and I don't really remember a whole lot about it. But anyways, I'm partially through this one, and it is very much in the same style. The first, third or so of the book has sort of been dealing more with kind of a more meta overview of sort of women. There's chapters on kind of not the Dark Ages, but the early Middle Ages, kind of just women in society, and kind of contrasting that with another chapter with the late and high Middle Age. Well, I guess high and then late Middle Ages. I always screw those ones up. And there's also a nice chapter kind of dealing with, I think it was called Mary and Eve, kind of dealing with sort of the religious overtones throughout the Middle Ages on what it meant to be a woman, and kind of the different pressures women were facing as far as dealing with the church, different interpretations, all that kind of stuff. But then starting after those chapters, we kind of get into more the bread and butter of what I kind of remember Joseph and Frances Gui's writing about. They're taking... In this book, what they're taking is an actual historical figure or a literary figure, and using that kind of as the template for a kind of a history of that kind of role that women play. Kind of like how in Life in a Medieval City, you have, or village or whatever, you had sort of a profession, and they kind of talked all about that. Kind of in the similar vein of that. Let me just give you a couple examples. I've only read the first one so far, but we got for the great ladies, we got Eleanor de Montfort, Piers Plowman's wife as kind of a category, Margherita d'Attini, an Italian merchant's wife, things like that. So they're taking, like I said, kind of a an actual historical figure to anchor kind of the history around, but kind of going into more broad stuff as well, not just focusing on that. Now, Eileen Powers' Medieval Women is actually quite a bit different. I hadn't read any of her stuff before, but I have 2 of her Folio Society books, and she was a prominent medieval historian, economic and medieval historian around the turn of the 20th century. And actually, I kind of enjoyed this book because there was a 30 or 40 page kind of biography of Eileen Powers at the beginning of it. It was just kind of really interesting to see how someone in that time, a woman in that time period, becoming kind of a highly regarded professor in medieval economics and stuff, which I thought was actually really interesting. But this one is definitely a lot more on the kind of, how do you word it, kind of more prosy or academic style. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it's all about kind of the meta of women. That probably didn't make any sense for people that don't understand the meta stuff. It's all about kind of just social constructs of women, I guess, and how women were perceived by different categories of people in the Middle Ages. Just for an example, the first official big chapter is just called Medieval Ideas About Women. And then you're kind of dealing, the next chapter is the lady, and you're kind of dealing with all the sort of like technical, like chivalric stuff and courtly love and what that is and what that actually wasn't, and this and that sort of thing. So we haven't gotten to like the nitty gritty stuff yet, though the next chapter after that I'm about to start is women in town and country. So I'm hoping that kind of gets more to the down to earth, like real life stuff, if that kind of makes sense. But it does definitely feel like a book that was written, you know, in a historical fashion, like 100 years ago. It definitely is. You can always like kind of tell that kind of different style of history writing, if that makes sense. But it's definitely enjoyable. It's definitely very readable. Like the prose is just very good, but just like I said, it's just not really my style per se. But I can see why it would have been popular. You know, I think this one actually, I can't remember in the biography if this one was published posthumously or not. I think it was. If I remember off the top of my head, but still would have been, I think, in like the 1940s. So anyways, like I said, two very different styles, but conveying some of the same information. I'll have to finish this one to see. But definitely kind of like the ideas about women was kind of briefly introduced in the Joseph and Frances Guise one as well. Just not quite to the extent of this one. So now let's go on to the audiobook before I forget, and it is The White Ship. This is what? Conquest, Anarchy, and the Breaking of Henry I's Plan? Was it Plan or Dream? Oh no, am I forgetting the subtitle? And this is by Charles Spencer. I'll put it up, right up there. So this is all about the White Ship incident, ostensibly, which in 1120 was, the White Ship was a ship that the English monarchy was using to transport people across the channel, like a royal yacht kind of thing going on. And unfortunately it did sink. I won't go into too much details because, you know, you should read about it and stuff. Needless to say, almost everyone, I think one guy survived, one random like butcher survived, and on the ship happened to be quite a bit of the aristocracy, as well as Henry I, who was the King of England. His son William Adelin was drowned during the sinking of the ship. So why I wanted to read this book was not just the whole White Ship incident, but apparently the book has, I knew it was going to deal with a lot about kind of the Norman conquest leading up, you know, from conquest in 1066 to 1120, kind of setting up the context. Then you have the White Ship incident, which if you only want to read about the White Ship incident, you know, this book isn't, like, I don't know if there's really enough to write like a whole book on just that per se, but the rest of the book is going to be dedicated to the anarchy, which is actually a very interesting subject that I kind of want to start reading more about because of Empress Matilda, who has quickly become one of my favorite medieval characters. I shouldn't say characters, figures. She's just got a really, really cool story. Definitely read like a biography on her if you can. I think Catherine Hanley's is very good. That's the one that I first read. Anyways, essentially, because of the whole White Ship incident, there's kind of a succession crisis, and Henry kind of realizes this, kind of going into it as he's getting older, he hasn't had another son, this kind of thing. So he makes all the barons say, well, you know, here's my daughter Matilda, swear oaths to her, she's just gonna become the Queen of England, we're gonna have to like deal with it. And they all do it. And then of course when Henry dies, they all act like a bunch of like craven curs and backtrack on that. And then Empress Matilda, she's known as Empress because she married the Holy Roman Emperor earlier in her life, kind of goes, wait a second, this is like, you know, this was promised to me, you guys made oaths, and now you're, you know, going back on it, I'm gonna invade England. And she does. And then there's kind of like a, you know, the whole anarchy, civil war thing going on. So anyways, like I said, just a really interesting book. I'm excited to actually start kind of the more anarchy period, just because I want to learn more about like kind of Matilda's story and the more nitty gritty on that sort of thing. But I've been enjoying it so far. And then lastly, we have Medieval Maritime Warfare by Charles Stanton. And this is by Pen and Sword. And a lot of Pen and Sword books, here, I'll give you like a couple examples. They're all roughly the same size here. I don't know if they did like some sort of weird study, right, to see like, you know, what kind of size books people like to buy for history books and stuff. But the problem is with this one, I started it. This one I legit, there's a reason why I haven't finished it yet. For example, here's like kind of the average margin and gutters and like font size and that sort of thing, right? Okay, so we got that. This one has like like a type 4 smaller font and like much smaller margins. So there's just like a lot more to each page for some reason. And it's about 50 pages longer. So even though it's only, like I said, like 50 pages longer, there's almost like twice the amount of text. Like it just feels like I'm making no progress as I'm like reading through it. Anyways, this is all about medieval maritime warfare. I don't really know anything about medieval maritime, like Navy stuff. I've read quite a bit on the ancient world back when I used to read a lot more like military histories and stuff. But this one, even though I don't read a lot of military history anymore, I just felt like this was a really big gap in my knowledge and stuff. What I find interesting about this book, though, is he definitely divided. I don't know why I said it like that. He divided the book into 2 parts, and at first I was pretty skeptical. I was a little bit nervous because how he divided it was not chronologically per se, but the first half is dealing with kind of the Mediterranean world and kind of the progress of military navies in that section of the world, and then the second half of the book is essentially the North Sea, so dealing with kind of, you know, the Norse, the Scandinavians, England, northern Germany, that kind of stuff. And that's just like a clear just cut in half through the book, and then each half deals chronologically with the developments in each of their respective areas. But it does sort of make sense because like even just the styles of boat building was quite a bit different in those 2 parts of the world and everything. But I've definitely been learning a lot. I'm almost done the first half, so the Mediterranean portion. It's really fun learning about like Byzantine stuff, you know, dealing with like Greek fire, kind of like what we actually know about it, what we don't know, how that really worked, and things like that. I just found really, really interesting. And like I said, I think it is pretty unique in that sense, and I do feel like even though it's a little bit of a slog, like it doesn't feel like it should be a slog. Like I said, I think it's only like 300 pages. Yeah, I want to say it's only like 300 actual text pages. It just, for whatever reason, like there's like twice as many words per page as I'm used to, so it just feels like it just takes forever. But I do feel like I'm learning a lot, and it's covering a lot of gaps in my kind of like knowledge base, and I feel like that's going to be helpful kind of like in the long run. So there you have it. Those are the 4 medieval history books that I am currently reading. I haven't been doing great with my medieval history, honestly, this year so far. Let me know if you are participating in Historathon, and if you have any medieval book recommendations, leave some comments down below so I can definitely go check them out. Thank you so much for watching, and whether you're reading medieval history or not, read victoriously.